I was 42, sitting at the brunch table in my parents' house, a chipped mug of store-brand coffee in front of me, when my grandfather raised his glass and said it. "I'm glad you like the place, Ethan." The room went still. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My mother glanced at my father. My father just sipped his orange juice. I live in the basement. Not a finished basement. Not a cool studio setup. I mean, cement floors, exposed pipes, a twin mattress on a metal frame. I rigged a curtain rod for privacy and run a dehumidifier year-round. My desk is wedged between the furnace and an old freezer that sounds like it's dying every night at 2 a.m. I said it without thinking. Just, I live in the basement. Like it was obvious. Like they didn't all know. But from my grandfather's face, he didn't. Let me back up. I'm a systems analyst. I work full-time, remote, and I've always paid my share. Groceries. Utilities. Sometimes the mortgage when Dad was between checks. I never moved out because, honestly, I couldn't afford it. Years ago, I tried to buy a condo, but Dad told me the loan didn't go through. "It's not the right time," he said. "We'll try again next year." That was 11 years ago. And I believed him. Or I wanted to. Because if I didn't, it would mean something worse. That maybe he never tried. That maybe they liked me down there, quiet and useful. Not asking for anything. Paying bills, fixing the Wi-Fi, showing up to family birthdays with a smile and a gift. So when Grandpa said that, toasted me like I owned something, I felt something cold move through me. Not anger yet. Just confusion. Like when you suddenly remember a dream detail and start questioning the rest of it. After everyone left that day, I asked my mom what he meant. She said, "I don't know. Maybe he was just being nice." But she knew. I saw it in her eyes. I went back downstairs and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the water stains spreading under the boiler. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why did Grandpa think I had a place? What was I missing? That's when the foundation started to crack. Not the literal one. I fixed that myself last year. I mean the story I'd built my entire adult life on. And all it took was one sentence to shake it loose. For a long time, I told myself it was temporary. Just until the condo market got better. Just until I got that promotion. Just until Mom's knee surgery was paid off. I stacked those just untils like sandbags, trying to hold back the flood of what I didn't want to face. That I wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't that I was lazy. I worked hard. Systems analyst for a logistics company out of Chicago, remote but demanding. I solved problems all day for other people. I was good at it. Got praise from clients I never met, bonuses that went straight to my parents' household budget. I had friends once. We used to go out after college. Then they started getting married, buying homes, having kids. I kept making excuses. Tight month, deadlines. My dad needs the car. After a while, the invites stopped. Sometimes I'd wonder what it would feel like to have a door I could close. A place where I didn't have to whisper on Zoom calls because Dad was watching TV upstairs. But I told myself I was being dramatic. Ungrateful. They let me stay rent-free, didn't they? They let me eat their food. That's what my father would say anyway, anytime I brought up moving out. "You've got it easy," he'd remind me. "No rent, no pressure. Other people would kill for that." And I'd nod. Because arguing never went anywhere. Because every time I got close to leaving, something came up. Mom needed help with the bills. Dad's car broke down. I couldn't just walk away, could I? Even when I brought up the failed condo once, he brushed it off. That was years ago. Why are you still stuck on that? He said the bank didn't like my credit. That he tried. That it wasn't his fault. I remember checking my credit later. It was fine, but I still let it go. I always let it go. That was the pattern. He'd speak with such certainty, like facts were just opinions with better posture. I'd end up doubting my own memory. Maybe I didn't sign the right paperwork. Maybe I misunderstood. It was easier to believe I failed than to believe I'd been deceived. Because one meant I still had control. The other meant I never did. So I stayed in the basement. Bought better headphones. Learned to live quietly. Watched my 20s, then my 30s, dissolve in the static. And told myself I was lucky. After that brunch, things didn't go back to normal. Not inside me, anyway. I started noticing things I used to ignore. The way my dad would change the subject if money came up. The way my mom would glance at him before answering even simple questions. The way certain drawers in the house were always locked, even though I lived there. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was just trying to understand. So I brought it up. Lightly. Asked if Grandpa had maybe gotten confused. If there'd ever been money set aside for me at some point. My dad didn't even look up from the TV. Just said, "You're too old to be fantasizing about handouts." That word, handouts, hit me in the gut. I'd paid every bill he handed me. Never asked for help. Never expected anything. Just tried to build something of my own from scraps. And suddenly I was someone begging? I laughed it off, but something shifted in me. I started staying up later, digging through old emails, bank statements, anything I had access to. I didn't find proof, not yet, but I found holes. Like how I'd filled out a mortgage pre-approval form 12 years ago and never heard back. Like how Dad had once said we got denied, even though he wasn't on the application. Like how the real estate agent I worked with stopped replying after she couldn't reach my co-signer. That co-signer was supposed to be my dad. I remember staring at that email for a long time. I hadn't thought about it in years. I'd buried the whole experience under layers of shame. Told myself I must have failed. That I wasn't ready. That next year would be different. But maybe it wasn't me who dropped the ball. Maybe I was never supposed to get that condo. That was the first time I let the thought take root. He might have taken something from me. I didn't sleep much after that. Not from anger. Yet, but because my brain wouldn't stop replaying moments I'd written off. Comments. Patterns. That time Mom said they were finally out of debt right around the same year I thought I was buying a place. I told myself I was being paranoid. Suspicious. That's what years of silence and self-blame do to you. Make you second-guess even the feeling of betrayal. But I couldn't unsee the gaps anymore. And somewhere deep down, I didn't want to. I didn't come out swinging. I didn't storm upstairs and demand answers. That's not how my family works. That's not how I was raised. We do silence. Long, slow silences that rot from the inside out. So I waited a few days. Let the tension simmer while I kept going through old files. I even called the bank, pretending to inquire about the status of a mortgage that never was. They had nothing on record, not for me, not for my dad. It wasn't that we'd been denied. It was that no application had ever been submitted. Still, I doubted myself. Maybe it went through a different lender. Maybe my dad tried and didn't tell me when it failed. Maybe I just forgot. That's how deep it went. I could look right at the absence of evidence and still blame myself. Eventually, I asked him again. This time more directly. Did Grandpa ever give you money to help me with a condo? He didn't flinch, just looked at me and said, "Why would he do that? You didn't even have a job back then." Which wasn't true. I'd been working at the tech firm for 3 years by then. I was even paying rent. But he said it so casually, so confidently, that I started to question myself all over again. I asked Mom. Her eyes shifted. She said she didn't remember the details, and maybe I was making a big deal out of nothing. A big deal out of nothing. I started wondering if I was going crazy, if I was obsessed. I'd spend hours replaying conversations in my head, scanning my memory for moments that could prove I wasn't imagining things. But memories don't come with receipts. And in this house, the truth was whatever made things quiet again. So I tried to drop it. Tried to go back to normal. But the basement felt smaller. The pipes louder. The air colder. Everything suddenly felt like a trap I'd mistaken for shelter. He told me once that some people weren't meant to own things. That responsibility was a burden not everyone could handle. At the time, I thought he was being philosophical. Now I wonder if he was confessing. And the worst part? Even after all that, I still wanted to believe him. Because if he wasn't lying, then none of this was personal. Just bad luck. Just timing. Just life. But something deep in my chest wouldn't settle. It was like living in a house where the floor keeps creaking under your feet. You can keep walking, pretending it's fine, but one day, the boards are going to give. And I was starting to feel the splinters. I couldn't let it go. Not because I wanted revenge or drama or some grand confrontation. I just needed to know if I was crazy. Because if I wasn't, if I'd really lost a shot at my own life because someone decided I didn't deserve it, then I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. So I called Grandpa. I didn't mean to bring it up. I called to check on him, make small talk. But halfway through, I heard myself say, Did you ever give Dad money to help me buy a place? There was a pause. Then he said, Of course. That wire I sent back when you were looking at that place in Clintonville. Don't tell me that fell through. My stomach turned. Clintonville. That was the neighborhood where I thought I was moving, where I'd looked at 2-bedroom condos with modest HOA fees and a decent view of the park. I even had a folder with printed listings I couldn't bring myself to throw away. I didn't correct him. I just said, yeah, it did. I never moved. He was quiet. Then, well, I wired the money straight to your father. 100,000. He said you were nervous about the process and wanted him to handle it. I couldn't even respond. My mouth was dry. My mind was screaming. I thanked him and hung up. Then I just sat there, staring at the water heater, the exposed insulation, the single bulb dangling from the ceiling. He thought I lived upstairs, that I had my own place. He thought I'd been living independently for years. All this time, he had no idea I was 10 feet below him, living like a tenant in my own family. And the worst part? That money could have changed my life. A down payment, a home, a space I could have made mine. No creaking ceilings. No midnight arguments muffled by vents. No begging for a turn with the washing machine. Instead, I'd been here, in the basement, paying bills, cleaning gutters, getting older and quieter and smaller. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just felt something slide into place. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was proof. I didn't plan what came next. I just texted Grandpa. Can I show you something? He came over the next afternoon. Walked slow, cane in one hand, a grocery bag in the other. He'd brought muffins. Still thought he was visiting my place. I led him down the stairs. At first, he thought I was showing him a storage room. He paused at the bottom step, looked around at the mattress, the lamp with no shade, the plastic drawer bins I used instead of furniture. The air was damp, the kind that clings to your skin. He didn't say anything right away, just stood there, his jaw tightening. Then he asked quietly, You've been living down here all these years? I nodded. He didn't look at me. He looked at the ceiling, then at the cords running along the wall, then back at the mattress. I thought he bought you something. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to explain. The truth was in the pipes, the concrete floor, the mildew smell. He sat on the edge of the bed and didn't speak for a long time. Then, almost to himself, he said, I gave him that money because he said you needed help. He said he was protecting you. I stayed quiet. He looked up, eyes sharp again. You didn't fail, Ethan. He lied to both of us. I don't know what I felt. Relief? Shame? All I remember is staring at my shoes, afraid to breathe too hard. He left soon after. No anger. No promises. Just a quiet, heavy goodbye. The next morning, I got a call. Meet me at First National at 10. Bring your ID, he said. I didn't ask questions. I showed up. He was already sitting with a banker and a man in a navy suit who turned out to be a lawyer. There were papers, real ones. A new account. Legal notices. Copies of the original wire transfer. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was real. He said, You're going to start fresh. On your terms this time. I signed. I said thank you. But what I really wanted to say was, why didn't you check sooner? But I didn't. Because I already knew the answer. We all believed my father. That was the whole problem. We trusted him. That's how he got away with it. The fallout wasn't loud. It didn't come in the form of a screaming match or a dramatic eviction. It came in looks. In silence. In the way my father sat stiff at the dinner table 2 days later, not speaking a word. In the way my mother cleared her throat every time I entered the room, like my presence alone was something to swallow. Then one night, he finally said it. You're tearing this family apart. I was standing in the kitchen, pouring cereal at midnight like I had every night for years. And suddenly, I was the villain. Not him. Not the man who took 100 grand meant for his own son's future. Not the man who lied about it for over a decade, while I scraped by in a basement like some oversized pet that paid bills. No. I was the one destroying things. For asking questions. For telling the truth. I didn't even argue. I just said, I'm moving out. And for a second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. Just a flicker. Not because he was losing me, but because he was losing control. Mom started crying. She asked me to please not make things worse. Said I was overreacting. That grandpa was confused, old, probably didn't remember the details right. But I'd seen the documents. I'd seen the wire, the date, the bank, the amount. They weren't confused. They were just scared I wouldn't stay quiet anymore. That week, Grandpa updated his will, removed my father from every document, made me his medical proxy, sent me a copy of everything, said he wanted it done right this time. My father didn't talk to me after that. He still hasn't. The last thing he said on the morning I started packing was this: "You think this makes you better than us? And you know what? I don't. But it makes me free. And that's something he'll never be." I moved into a month-to-month apartment above a mechanic shop. It smelled like oil and brake dust, and the ceiling leaked when it rained. But it was mine. The first night there, I sat on the floor with a grocery store sandwich and an unopened bottle of orange soda. No internet. No furniture yet. Just me and a blanket. And for the first time in years, I felt something I didn't recognize at first. Quiet. Not silence. Not the tense, loaded silence of that house. Real quiet. Peace. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But instead, I just sat there breathing like I had forgotten how. I could hear my own thoughts again. They weren't yelling anymore. I kept waiting for the guilt to catch up. It didn't. No late-night texts. No angry voice emails. Just nothing. The silence from my father wasn't punishment, it was permission. Permission to stop performing. To stop explaining. To stop shrinking myself to fit into his version of me. I went back and looked at photos of my childhood. Things I hadn't touched in years. I saw a kid with big eyes and hunched shoulders. Always standing just behind someone else. Always in the background. Like even then I knew not to take up space. I don't know exactly when I disappeared into the walls of that house. Maybe it was the first time I fixed something and didn't get thanked. Or when I paid a bill and they didn't even notice. Or maybe it was when I got used to the idea that love in that house was earned, not given. But sitting there on that dusty floor, I realized something important. I didn't fail. I didn't fall short. I didn't miss my chance. I was stolen from, lied to, manipulated into thinking I didn't deserve more. And I finally stopped apologizing for seeing it. A week after I moved out, I sent in my resume. Not a cleaned-up version, not some desperate scattershot email blast. Just one application, to a mid-sized IT firm I'd heard good things about years ago. I figured they'd pass me over like the others. But they didn't. The manager called 2 days later and said, "Your experience is solid. Why have you been buried all this time?" And I almost said it. Almost told her about the basement, about the lies, about how long I'd spent thinking I wasn't worth more than that boiler room. But I didn't. I just said, life got in the way. I'm ready now. They offered me a job. Full-time. Remote optional, with benefits. The salary wasn't huge, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand desk. A real one. Put it in the corner by the window where the morning sun hit. I sat at it like it was an altar. Like the first real thing I'd earned. I started therapy, too. The free kind that comes with your job if you ask for it and don't mind being on hold for 40 minutes. The first session, I just sat there and said, I think I disappeared for a while. The therapist didn't rush to fix me. Just nodded and said, okay, so let's find you again. And that broke something open in me. Not in a bad way, more like a rusted hinge finally moving. I told Janelle, a former coworker, and probably the only person who ever really asked how I was doing. She didn't gasp or say, "Oh my God." She just said, "I always knew something was off about the way you talked about home. I'm glad you're out." No pity. Just warmth. That meant everything. I used to think rebuilding your life was some dramatic movie moment. A big speech. A sudden change. But it's not. It's logging into a work portal with your name on the payroll. It's buying a lamp because you like how it glows. It's telling your story to one person and realizing, finally, you're not crazy. You were just stuck in someone else's version of you. And now you're not. A month after I started the new job, I got 2 letters. One was from Grandpa. Handwritten, neat cursive, folded in a plain white envelope. He said he was proud of me. Said he should have asked more questions years ago. That letting someone else handle things had become a habit and one he finally broke. He ended it with, Some things you only fix by doing them yourself. This time I did. I read it 3 times. Then I pinned it to the wall above my desk. It was the first thing in that apartment that felt like family without a weight attached to it. The second letter was from my father. Typed. 2 pages. Cold, precise language. Legal threats. Accusations. Emotional manipulation of an elderly man. Breach of family trust. He called me selfish. Ungrateful. Claimed I exploited an old man's memory for personal gain. I didn't reply. I shredded it and threw it away in pieces, one handful at a time, like breaking a curse. That was the last I heard from him. No birthday calls. No Christmas card. No vague forwarded email from Mom. Just silence. And for the first time, I didn't fill that silence with guilt. I let it be quiet. I started decorating the apartment. Slowly. Second-hand bookshelves, thrifted mugs, a couch that creaked but held its shape. I painted one wall yellow just because I could. No one rolled their eyes. No one told me it was too much. Sometimes I still wake up early, half expecting to hear footsteps above me. But there's nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the soft creak of the walls when the heat kicks in. I never realized how heavy the background noise of shame was until it was gone. And the day I finally framed that first paycheck and stuck it on the fridge, I stood there and smiled. Not because of the money, because it had my name on it. 6 months out, I don't think I've ever been this boring. And I mean that in the best way. I wake up without dread. I make my own coffee. I open my laptop and work at my desk while the sunlight hits my chipped yellow wall. Some days I talk to Janelle. Some days I don't talk to anyone. And that's okay. I've learned that peace doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like nothing chasing you. I haven't spoken to my father since I moved out. Haven't heard from my mother either. I think she chose the silence. I don't blame her anymore. She made her choice. I made mine. Grandpa and I talk every Sunday. Sometimes it's short, 10 minutes about the weather or which grocery store messed up his order. Sometimes it's longer. Sometimes we don't even talk about what happened. Just life now. And that's enough. He offered to help me buy a condo again, this time directly. But I said no. Not because I'm proud. Because I want to do this next part on my own. The truth is, I'm not trying to win anymore. I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I just want to live honestly, without shame, without secrets, without that voice in my head whispering that I'm a burden. Because I'm not. I was never the problem. And if someone reading this is stuck in a version of themselves that feels small, quiet, or constantly owed, let me say it clearly. Sometimes the people who clip your wings will tell you it's for your own safety. But freedom doesn't come with permission. It starts the moment you stop waiting for it.